Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and happy to have our guy Schlegs with us here. We are waiting on my man Joshua Perry. He's going to be joining us here momentarily to get his take on everything. Big show for today. We got Ben Stevens going to be joining us to get all of our betting takes. Get your What's Your Beak. There's a number of games that are going to be on this weekend. We'll get into all of those. And it's been far too long since we've had our guy JP with us. Excited to have him on here today. As Joshua Perry's going to be joining and talking a little bit about, the recap of what happened in the game, maybe some of the rankings, and then where everything is. And here we go, Mr. Joshua Perry in a quarter zip and a backwards cap. I mean, looking like 1994, ready to go.
1994, the year I was born. How we doing, fellas?
Gosh. Good, man, my man. That's amazing.
How have the last 72 to 96 hours been sitting for you, Joshua?
It's a weird thing because I'm not in Columbus, so I think there's something therapeutic in being able to commiserate with people, to be miserable with folks who are going through the same thing as you. I'm out here, so it's like there's part of it where it's like you could just drop it and let it go. There's another part of it where a guy who I host a show with every day played at the University of Michigan, and I get to see the joy that he has. There's like the emotional approach from it, and I'm still kind of in the middle of the emotion. There's also like this academic, how do you proceed forward and how do you make sense of what happened approach. And the more I watch the all 22 copy of that game, which I've watched a number of times, the more dumbfounded I am in what happened. And certainly Ohio State, the ability to run the ball was always going to be tough because of what the offensive line looked like. And I give those guys a ton of credit. I thought both sides of the ball played really, really hard. But you're sitting there like Michigan is giving you looks that invite the run, but it keeps going right into where they got two $90 million men, right? Guys who are going to make a ton of money in the NFL. And it just, with Chip Kelly, Ryan Day, two guys who are, supposed to be offensive geniuses, I think you expected more answers, different looks, different ways to try to creatively get the ball onto the edge, to get guys moving, to create better angles and leverage for blocking. So certainly it's tough, but you got 365 days. You better come up with an answer in that amount of time.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to come up now, right? Because that's the difference. You're in the college football playoff. And I actually spoke at a Techstar event last night, and I was just looking out there, and all of us have been in business. We've all had big losses. Everybody individually has had their own the game. It's what do you do next, right? That matters because you're in the dance now. You're in the 12. So what do you do? What's that approach, Joshua, that you got to have? Because you guys suffered losses early in the season. What is it that you got to do now, right? You never experienced this loss, but you've experienced some. What do you got to do now to move forward over the next 16 days before you have your first round playoff game?
It's an interesting question because I do remember, 2014, we lose at home to Virginia Tech, who was not a good football team. We had time, right? That was the big benefit that we had. It was so early in the season. We had time to get better as a football team. 2015, we lose to Michigan State on the last second field goal. That one was a gut punch, but we knew that we lost to a good team. Some chaos happened. We handled business against our rival, which was like the perfect get back, is to go play your rival on the road. You feel much better about that. And I think these guys, it's almost a negative that they have so much time at this point in the year before they get to play again. I think sometimes the best medicine is getting right back out there on the practice field, having a regular game week, being able to go and hit somebody in the mouth in a week's time. So they're going to have to kind of sit there and stew. I think they have to control that emotion. The other part of it too, and this is the question that I have that I didn't go through, is after any of our losses, I don't think we went back in the locker room and we're like, I'm not sure of us as a group. I'm not sure of our leadership. I'm not sure of our coaching, etc. And I do think that this is the kind of
I don't know. That Michigan State game, Joshua, there may have been some questions thrown out there.
Yeah, well, we knew exactly who our OC was at that point. Let me be perfectly clear. So I really don't think the question was actually there. It was just like, if we go out this next game, we're gonna have to get it done because we got guys. But the moral of the story is, like, I do think this is one of those where, and I don't want to sound dramatic, but like you probably sit there and you question everything because you've played so well in so many moments. Even the game that you do lose to the eventual number one team in the country comes right down to the last few seconds. You're right there in the game the whole time. So I hope that those guys don't start to do the over questioning part. They just need to get back on the field and they need to start preparing. I know they don't have their opponent, but get back to basics, go through the fundamentals, stay in condition, and then be ready once they get their opponent to prepare a game plan.
So you talked, Joshua, about, obviously running at the two beasts inside, and Grant and Graham are two of the best, and they're the best pair probably in the country, and both of them are going to be high picks. And so behind that, they ran what people would consider a two shell look, trying to stay deep, keep everything underneath, and not really inviting the deep pass. I guess I look at that and it's like, well, you can't block the guys on the inside, which is a problem. You can't really take shots. You can, but like you still have to block those guys on pass pro, like, which is its own set of issues. And some of the snaps were getting a little dicey there. Will had to take his eye off of it, look down. I mean, it wasn't a clean game, obviously, for him, but he wasn't helped a ton either. But they had some serious issues up front. I mean, and it was just kind of a bad matchup as well. So what would the solution in your mind as you looked at it? I mean, was there a way to attack it? Was there something that could have been done, you think? I mean, would you have gone more tempo? I mean, what would have been the solution ideally?
Tempo is the first thing that pops into mind. Like those guys are really good. They're big dudes. They get tired. But you have to feel confident in your offense's ability to maintain positive gains to go tempo. The moment that you have a bad play, you feel like you got to get out of it. So that becomes tough. The other thing for me though is, I get Will he got popped and maybe you get gun shy there. You got a mobile quarterback and they ran the one option that got him 15 yards. Like that's something I would look at there. Different ways to get the ball on the edges. I do feel like the run game, the thing that I didn't see was outside field side runs. I don't think they really tested that. And I felt like there were yards to get out there. And so that's what I'm saying, where it's like, I know how difficult it is, but if you hit them on a few of those types of runs, now they're starting to think about what they do to bring that safety back in. Do we tell our linebackers now we have to play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage? That's where you might be able to take advantage of an Emeka Ibuka getting over the top of his own coverage, which he's been fantastic at all year long. It's those little adjustment things that just make a defense feel like they can't execute their plan 100% the way that they want to. And I felt like Ohio State lacked that counterpunch when they saw what Michigan was putting out there.
And that kind of goes into the fact, like I remember you brought up Michigan State 15. It was like feed Zeke. And then you go in this game and Jeremiah doesn't get a catch in the second half.
Yeah, man.
And the guy got 2 PIs. But I want to ask you this, because I'm always about the positive. So I want to know, because let's not also negate the fact, right? We had 2 turnovers. You have to win the turnover battle in this. It became 2-2. You missed 2 field goals. That's absolutely terrible, right? That would have put you up 6. Now that changes Michigan's mindset going into this game as they're making that drive. And we already had a goal line stand earlier. But what were some of the best things that you saw in that game that give you some juice going into this next one? Because that's where I like to hang my hat. We know where we got to get better. All right, but here's the things that we did well. Let's go capitalize on that. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now, and saw Michigan players out there on the field afterwards saying that you get on social media, their fans say at Ohio State soft. That bothers me so much because I love and respect those guys in the Ohio State locker room. And I tell you, they played a tough game. I mean, they brought it all game long. They were hitting. For Michigan, for all the talk about we all we do is run, all we do is run. I mean, you broke one at the end where just off of like bad tackling, miraculous play. I mean, you were getting like 2.5 yards a carry most of the game. Like it wasn't this idea like Ohio State's defensive line was getting pushed around or anything. Like, congratulations, you got 2 first-round picks that were able to beat up on a second-string guard and a second-string center. Like, those guys still brought it. Wasn't perfect execution, could have been much better. I thought they played physically tough. How about Caleb Downs? coming down on the goal line stand, smacking somebody right in the face from the safety position. That guy looks like he's willing to die to make a play anytime he's on the football field. I love watching that. Cody Simon, all year long, it's been the same thing, that same burning passion and desire to make plays on the defensive side of the ball. Thought the wide receivers didn't get a lot of opportunities out there on the edges in the pass game, didn't get them in the run game. Thought they tried to block the edges really well. Like, the thing that I do take away, man, effort, intensity, passion, physicality, like from a physical standpoint, it was all there. Execution has to get better, and I think the plan to put the players in the best position to win has to get better. But those guys gave it their all. And anybody who tries to say otherwise, I'm really not trying to hear that. Like, I appreciate the way that they came prepared to play for that game.
Yeah, there was a physical element, emotional element that they were ready to meet the moment with that for sure, Joshua. As we look forward and you watch that game, obviously compartmentalize some of it, but leaving that now 10-2, going to be in the CFP, probably getting a home game. I would say about 95% certainty, at least 90 with that. Is there anything with you've seen? You watch all the games around the country. You're locked in on this. I've got a chance to see Bama, Oklahoma, LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, like the 3 SEC teams that, are right there outside of Texas. Watch them all in person. I don't see any teams this year that I would say are demonstratively better than Ohio State. I don't know if there's anybody that I would say is more talented. So do you believe this team still has all the ingredients to be able to hoist the final trophy?
I mean, they got a win on the road against the current number 3 team. And like I said, a 1-point loss to the current number 1 team. Absolutely. Like they have all of what it takes, all the ingredients to be a championship team. I think this is mental, right? I think it's mental, getting yourself up off the mat. The leaders bringing everybody together and realizing the opportunity that they had. Can't change anything in the past, certainly can control what they have in the future. And I think it's incumbent upon that coaching staff to really say, all right, we got to make sure we keep our guys together. We got to love on them. We got to coach them hard, but we got to make sure they're together. And then what can we do in order to never have anybody ask the question about, did you throw it enough? Did you run it enough? We got to bring our A game so our guys can be on their A game. But from the standpoint of can they get it done, man, as you mentioned, I watched Tennessee, very flawed team, could be a potential matchup. I think I like Ohio State in that. Notre Dame has come around just as we're going around college football. They don't throw it very well. They're a very one-dimensional team. Like, I haven't seen somebody who could shut down their run game. If you can, I think it's over against them, right? Like, there are very definite things for each of these teams that are out there where if you get the job done, you can beat them. And so I think Ohio State still got every opportunity in the world to make a run.
Quit muting yourself, Schlegs.
Yeah, because the AC's blowing. Hey, can you hear that? No, it doesn't matter. Guess what? I don't see any construction workers today. So that being said, CFP rankings, we're 6th. How do you see it playing out? Because Penn State, they've already said the consequences of losing in a championship game not going to really move that much. Like, everybody else has kind of been set. Where do you see, like, ultimately this, falling into place for Ohio State and just the bracketing in general?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the committee would handle that, particular if any of these losses in conference championship games are by wide margins. But like the Penn State-Ohio State thing, it'd be interesting. The reason Penn State is in there is not because they beat Ohio State. It's because Ohio State lost. They lost head-to-head to Ohio State, and then Ohio State goes out and loses the game they're not supposed to. If Oregon goes out and beats them by, 17 points, does the committee feel like they can keep them above Ohio State? Do they drop them down below them? Would still be hosting a playoff game potentially? Do they feel like that matters in terms of ranking if you still have a similar outcome in terms of how you're playing in your first round game? I don't exactly know. I'd also be curious, like, Georgia wins and Penn State wins. Is Penn State number 1? Is Georgia number 1? Like, what are we doing there? And so those are the things I'm looking at. And then finally, this idea that just because you didn't play, you don't get another data point. Like, I do think there are data points based off of how the teams that you have played would perform on conference championship weekend. So we shouldn't have never closed that door. I'm curious to see if they lie to us some more.
Yeah, that was very interesting. It's the first time that anyone's ever said that. Like, you're fixed if you're done. Like, people can move around you, but relative to teams that are done playing, it's over. By the way, I mean, if James Franklin does the unthinkable, wins this, like, I think they're getting the 1 seed, Joshua. Like, does he get like a crown and a little pimp cane to walk around with at that point in Happy Valley?
No, I mean, the only thing that's good for him, he doesn't get the ability to lose in the first round, but he would definitely lose in the quarterfinals there. But shout out to Julian Fleming if they do get that victory. That'd be nice for that young man.
That'd be pretty darn impressive. Joshua, thank you for your time. I mean, I know that you got a lot to get off your chest. You had some time to kind of let it marinate, and this is how this stuff always is. And it seems like they have the guys, and it seems like they have the horses. Before we get you out of here, I do want to ask you this. The end of the game situation, guys have been kind of accused of not caring enough and maybe not being tough enough. And then now everybody said, there's too much on the other side. I'm not a fan of post-game fighting, but it does seem like there is a high GSF for these guys with regard to how much they care about this university.
Man, listen, there's no problem for me. In 2022, Michigan came and planted the flag. Everybody got on social media and said how they would never let that happen. And so they try to do it again this year, and the same people are like, oh, my God, that is terrible. And it's like, yes, it's an ugly look. I'm the dude who got the interception that could have been the Zach Boren, Tyvis Powell moment of his career. Yeah. I'm not going to get on his case for wanting to go out there and defend his turf. I love the passion. I wish the head coach looked like he was a little bit more in tune with what was happening in the moment. That felt like it fell short on a leadership standpoint. But for the players, and I understand the passion that goes into that, man, like it's hard for me to say that you were wrong in trying to defend what you thought was right.
Absolutely. Well, Joshua, thank you so much. Hopefully you have a great weekend. Just see how this all checks out, and maybe we'll get together next week in preparation for a CFP home game in Ohio Stadium.
All right, let's do it, fellas. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. That is the Joshua Perry. Go check him out on the NBC desk on Saturday night. Does such a great job right there. All right. Attention athletes and parents. Protect what matters most with Export mouth guards, trusted by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouth guards, they're scientifically tested to absorb those high impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouth guards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including patented use of carbon fiber. They custom 3D print those things right to your grill. That means more protection, better performance, max comfort, and clearer communication, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby and save 15% on Export mouth guards. Export, protect what matters most. There's a players-only meeting, allegedly. Ohio State, the team meeting wrap-up. Schleg's not going to dive into what that means. And is it positive? Is it a negative? What transpired? Find out next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages, because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And Schlegs, people talk about players-only meetings. Some people say they're terrible. You want to have wrap-up meetings, and you always have that after the game. Like at the end of the season, you're always going to have something. You've got forward-looking, you've got a bowl game, Big Ten championship, whatever you might have. So you wrap that up, and sometimes you ask the coaches to leave. Sometimes you maybe have some of the coaches in there, and we're in an era now where probably college football is more like the NFL. But I still think it's very different in the fact like you have a core group of guys and your leaders, and they're just at a different stage of life. I don't think in the NFL it typically goes very well when that's the case. But there was this portion of the meeting was alleged to be players only, and it was reported, leaked out. People were talking that it got incredibly hostile and there was people having to be restrained. I looked at it, talked about it, did some research. I think that there was a very honest meeting that happened. I think that there were people that said some things that maybe made some other people uncomfortable, some other teammates, and that's what exactly you want. But in your experience with some of these closed door meetings, when people may voice, their truth, their honest opinion about what they think is going on and where people need to improve and what they do. So when you see that, is that concerning to you? Is it positive? Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum of everything?
Why would you put such an emphasis on player-led teams, which are the best, and not think it's a positive to have those type of hard reflection convos? You need them. And in a team meeting, that's the only time that you can get everybody together, right? Think about that, right? Offense might meet, defense lift. Defense meet, offense lift. They're never together except when they go practice, and then they're practicing what? Power of the unit, right? Different locations on the field. So what a great opportunity to be able to have that type of setting. And when you go through a 12-game season with the expectation of doing a lot of great things and it falls short, and your leader and your leaders on this team want to have an honest conversation with everybody that's in there, that's on their heart, open it up, right? Just get it off your chest. Let's hear what's going on. That's authentic and that's real. You can do those with dignity and respect. Some of the things you say could potentially be hurtful, right? Get little ass hurt, right? Little feelings, right? Needs to be said, right? Coaches need to be challenged. Players need to be challenged. But you and I know this. Let's just take AJ for example. AJ is not one that ever really talked, right? But when AJ did talk, people listened, right? Same thing with a Nate Sally. Same thing with a Rob Sims, right? And if they saw somebody in actions that weren't up to the standard and it wasn't being addressed, they wanted to address it in that particular meeting, that's an opportune time to go do that. Because it's hey, we got now 16 games here. This isn't going to happen anymore. So there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're in a business and you don't have authentic, hard conversations with your people, you're doing your business and all those people a disservice. Because how are you going to be able to hold them accountable? How are you going to be able to fire those people, right? If they don't know that they don't know, you have to make sure that you communicate that. And it's great to be able to voice it, because your thought and your perception of how somebody is adding value or how they practice or how they're taking care of their body or whatever it is that they're doing in the building goes against what they perceive to be the standard, and it's not. They need to change their perception and they need to change their action to get it to be better, because ultimately that's why football is the greatest team sport in the world. It takes everybody. We saw it in this game. A punter can affect this game. A field kicker can affect this game. Somebody missing a block can affect this game because it is heightened. And now you're going into the playoffs. And just like the game, all those hidden yardages that you and I talked about, all those one-off runs that we talked about that chew up clock and move the ball on third down, those all are heightened because you're now the college football playoff. There's no difference between this playoff than what's going to happen in the NFL playoff. And that's why I love what AJ brought up the other day. It's man, you mean we got a chance? They're a wild card and they won the Super Bowl. You got a chance. Now let's go win this thing. That is good stuff.
Very good stuff. And I think it was very productive. And I think.
And anybody that's saying that it's bullshit, they got heated and people want to be, that's bullshit. Just letting you know.
I got you. Believe me, I hate when people mischaracterize and misrepresent things that happened and try to over-exaggerate things for hype, as opposed to just, hey, if you want to talk about something, hey, have an honest conversation and dialogue. I have no problem with that, but it bothers me to see that transpire when it didn't. So there was some passion, which is good. That means people give a crap. And when you give a crap, you care a lot, and that's important with everything. All right, put a pin in that. We got our headlines. Some big headlines. Some news about Buckeyes, some potential departures and things like that coming up here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, now we got our headlines here, and there's some coming at you quickly. Josh Simmons tore up his knee during the Oregon game. And, when that happened, I thought, okay, this guy is potentially going to be a first-round draft pick. People said he was ascending to potentially be the best left tackle in this draft. He got hurt, so you're thinking, okay, what's he going to do? He's going to rehab. Could he come back? And we can toss this up, Pat. I thought there was a chance after the injury that he would return, but unfortunately, he will be leaving to enter the NFL draft. Let that be known. If you want to toss that up there, Pat, we can talk quickly about that because his loss, Schlegs, it's going to be big. But now they ultimately know in the portal, you've recruited guys, you know what you have on your roster, and you know if you may need to bring somebody else in.
Yeah, no doubt. And good for Jimmy, right? Like he set himself up, like he's projected number 22 prospect on the big board, whatever. And where is he going to go? I'll tell you what, man, Jimmy is a freak, man. He is one of the most gifted, athletic, powerful, big dudes that I've ever seen, like in a box. And that's a testament to his work. It's a testament to Mick and his staff and Fry. But good for him. I totally understand why he's going.
And then we got two guys that are entering the portal. And, it's interesting. We'll get into some of the tailgate talk questions from you, brought to you by Real Truck. There's some comments in yesterday's YouTube chat that are pretty wild. So we'll get to those, Schlegs. They'll be fun. But Gabe Powers, linebacker out of Marysville, Jaden Ballard, wide receiver out of Massillon. I believe Gabe still has maybe 2 years left of eligibility. I think Jaden Ballard has maybe one. If I'm not mistaken, he could have two. I'll have to go back and look because all this COVID stuff and how it changed everything. But I think that they've got 1 and 2 years left. They're both leaving. Not surprising. Neither one of those guys played probably as much this year as they would have liked and they would have hoped. And they have very deep rooms, and there's a lot of more guys coming in as well.
Yeah, and listen, guys, it's good for them. I'm honestly, both of those dudes, enjoyed working with them. Great young men, and they're going to do great things.
Yeah, and so we see that right there. Both those guys are out. There might be a couple more guys, but honestly, I don't anticipate a ton of defections. And if it is, it's guys that probably are getting stacked up on the depth chart a little bit right now anyway, and getting squeezed from the starters to the new guys coming in.
I think there's another one of Kojo leaving too. So,
so Kojo, another receiver, obviously. And so they've got – Hart's got another big-time class coming in. They just signed yesterday. We'll look at that here in the coming weeks as well. All right, we got some tailgate talk brought to you by Real Truck. Some of your comments and questions coming up next.
Get the most out of work, life, and all your outdoor adventures with top-selling upgrades for your truck. Guaranteed fit, free shipping. Get the most out of work, life, and all your outdoor adventures with top-selling upgrades for your truck. Guaranteed fit, free shipping, easy install, expert support, and thousands of dealers just a click away. Bring your truck to life. Real Truck. Upgrade today and save between $50 and $400 on select Real Truck products. Visit realtruck.com/specials.
All right, now we are here to our talk brought to you by Real Truck. Listen, it's Cyber Week now through Sunday, December 8th. This Sunday, go to realtruck.com. They're offering savings up to 50% on select steps, running boards, truck bed covers, and accessories all the way through the end of the week. Visit realtruck.com/specials to learn more about the incredible gift-giving deals. Bring your truck to life and your friends' trucks to life. Broncos, Jeeps, whatever it is. And don't forget promo code Bobby. If you spend $100 at realtruck.com, you get your free hat. So go check it out from now until December 8th. Potentially save 50% on select items at realtruck.com. All right, Schlegs, going to some of the chat, the comments from yesterday. There's a good one. We'll scroll through these. We might do a full chat show yesterday. I was trying to figure out who guests we could get and talking to some people. I think we might do a full full chat show. A lot of tailgate.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
Yeah, and we also talk about potential matchups. But here's one from Robert Forney.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, biggest frustration about this game. It was the same problems we had last year. Nothing was addressed in the run game from the offensive line to the special teams and the kicking game. Day is a stubborn SOB. I will say this. I mean, you lost 3 offensive linemen. There were things that were addressed. You brought in Chip Kelly. The run game has looked better. You brought in Quinshon Judkins. Some of it was a function of Michigan was really good up front. And then also there was a lot of injuries that had transpired in a bad spot. So, like, that's kind of – I think that's it. In the kicking game, okay. I mean, maybe you change kickers midstream. Do you try somebody else? Yeah, I don't know. That's a dicey situation right there.
Punting has been subpar for basically all season. You have a kid coming from Australia, supposed to be the starter. What happened to him? You go in here, you've missed multiple field goals this year. Hasn't been locked in when you're playing in these big-time games. I mean, again, you go back to that Georgia game. Was it fielding then too, right? I don't remember.
No, it was not. It wasn't fielding.
Yeah, but, I mean, you know, you lost that game on a field goal, though it was long, but I just remember it was like, boom, all right, they didn't even have a chance. So, yeah, those are things, man. Like, that's a real thing. Like, that has not been addressed. So, yeah, but, you know, there were some things that were addressed, like you ran a punt return back with Caleb, you know, so that was good. But, again, I'm with you, Robert. I understand what you're saying. I mean, it is the game. There were things that were addressed that Bob mentioned, but definitely got to get better in those areas.
Here we go. This one is from Adam. So players after the game that lost came back on the field and started a brawl that caused many players to get pepper sprayed and don't get punished and are allowed to play in the next game. Might as well fight after every game. If you lose and there's no punishment. I will say this. They didn't come back onto the field. Those guys were still on the field. And then were made aware the guys at Michigan were going to plant the flag. So last year, 2 years ago, they complained when they planted it. Nobody tried to stop it. Well, when you try to stop it, Schlegs, you're going to have a fight. And there's going to be a brawl. That's what it is.
I love people, man. You know what I mean? And that perception. And they weren't. They were right in the middle of Carmen, Ohio, singing that, and that was going down. Those guys have a lot of pride. You know, I think flag planting is absolutely, you know, asinine and weak loss in and of itself. I mean, when we play this game, there was a mutual respect, Bob, for both sides, right? Like, hey, listen, man, go sing with your band, right? You won the game. Like and those guys spilt it. I think Joshua made a great point. The one thing I always look at, what is the effort on that field? Are our guys playing hard? Man, they played hard all the way to the very end. And there were a lot of mistakes in that game. Like, honestly, you want to talk about an issue, I ain't talking about the end of the game issue. Like, that's not the thing. I'm talking about how was there a defensive substitution to get an extra 10-second runoff, right? Like, I'm talking, and I'm thinking about the missed goals and the missed opportunities in the red zone in the areas in which we were so good at this year. Yeah. We didn't execute, and then also the game plan. So, like, I focus on the main thing, not the accessory BS that should never have been there.
Yeah, people want to focus on some of the other stuff. And then we've got a three-banger here before we get to our guy, Ben Stevens. This is from Wes Mancan.
Oh, I like it, Wes.
You might not like this.
Okay.
Day was given a 5-star rooster, or I'm guessing roster. He is underachieved and is going to cost us recruits next year. Won't be surprised if more guys defect either. I sure would if I was involved in that failure. Following up, listen, they got to go because I said so. Obviously, Wes Mancan is in charge. He's no head coach. You folks won't critique him for some reason. That's why he's soft. Rebuttal to that from Roris, I believe. They don't want to lose their access to the program, and they know Day has rabbit ears about being so sensitive and being criticized that he would cut them off if they admitted what everyone else is. So I will say this, call it as I see it. If I said 2021, they got beat up physically and were soft. So that was not the case this year. The game plan, I think, was stubborn and didn't change and move as much as it should have this season in the Michigan game. They missed field goals. That's unacceptable. They had special teams errors, which maybe was due to substitution and just too many guys being involved. There's maybe some other things that are out there, Schlegs, but this is Ryan's 6th year here. These are not recruits that he was handed. Like, he's brought in all of these guys at this point. They just signed another top recruiting class. They've done a great job. There's not going to be many guys leave. The guys that are leaving are guys that aren't going to play and have opportunities. So I don't think that narrative holds true. As much as people want to believe that, and they're entitled to believe what they want, I'm going to tell you that I don't believe that narrative to be true based upon what you see the action of the players. You got like 1 minute, Schlegel.
Yeah, 1 minute. They still got like the best quarterback in the class. They got the best wide receiver in the class. They got some of the best linebackers in the class. I mean, like, you know, I'm not big into recruiting because I really don't care about recruiting. You got to have the horses. My only point is this: no, you're not going to lose recruits. You could potentially lose recruits if you fire them.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? So, but to your point, but our point is this: like, first off, I'm never going to go against the people that are already in the building because I want to root for the Buckeyes. Like, that's how I am. I just want to root for the Buckeyes. But I call you out, I can see it. You have 3 plays on defense. You miss 2 freaking field goals that changes the game. Facts, right? You throw a terrible pick that goes down to the 2 after the defense had a goal line stand, right? You had a big-time play that you couldn't move forward, right? You punt it, they get a short field. Like, guys, they didn't execute in the game. Like, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It come down to anything else. The guys played hard.
There's some things that could have been done differently, game planning wise as well.
Oh, I'm with you. I agree. And you and I would ask them those questions.
Okay. We got Ben Stevens here coming up. Sports Grid Radio coming up next. All right, now our guy Ben Stevens joining us from Sports Grid Radio. And sorry, we had to keep him waiting. He's ready to go. He's ready to rock. My man Schlegel gets so fired up, Ben. I apologize for keeping you in the queue. At least you got to see some of his craziness, though.
See, I'm always glad to sit backstage behind the scenes. I don't know if you guys can see me, but I can see and hear you. I love Tailgate Talk. I think it is great stuff. Also, Bobby, the delivery on the 5-star rooster got me so good. That's one of the best misspellings and typos of a Tailgate Talk submission. 5-star rooster. That is all time. And Schlegs, the heat, the passion. It's why we love college football.
Well, thank you. Thank you for waiting for us there, Ben. We appreciate it. I know there's a ton of big games out there we want to get to. I want to get to one first that piques my interest. It's the 2 schools that my brother and father are alums of that in the past would have never played each other in a conference championship because they were on the same side, taking place at Ford Field noon. I'm sad they moved it off Friday because I can't go to the game now because I got kids' games and everything going on. The Ohio Bobcats, 1.5 dogs against the Miami Redhawks. Ohio University hasn't won a championship in 50 years. They've had multiple opportunities over the last 25, I think, to be exact. They've come up ever so short. Is this the year that they can flip the script and get it done?
Your brother or your father, which one am I going to let down right now?
You can say whatever you want. My dad might be more of a Bobcats fan anymore.
Listen, I'm a huge Chuck Martin guy. The Redhawks, obviously, the MAC champions a year ago. Miami of Ohio, I give them a ton of credit for their non-conference slate. They played Notre Dame. They played Northwestern. They played Cincinnati in that rivalry game as well. They did not cover in any of them. But one thing that Chuck Martin does incredibly well, by the time the Redhawks get to MAC competition, that's play defense. In the battle between these two earlier in the regular season, actually went slightly over, 30-20, Miami of Ohio victorious over the Bobcats. But really outside of that, both defenses, but namely Miami of Ohio, elite against MAC foes. I'm going to trust in that once again. So although, Bobby, I do believe the right side is slightly favored in Miami of Ohio, sorry to let down the Carpenter family in some form or fashion, I do actually, if I had to give you a best bet for the game, and I have already bet this, under 44.5 for the MAC championship on Saturday.
So it'll be a rushing battle. I guess Pat's got a picture of my dad. He said he's going to toss up here because that's my dad and my brother. But honestly, like he's probably a little more of a Bobcat fan.
Oh,
in the Hall of Fame too. Yeah,
come on now.
There you go.
Let's go.
Back in the day.
Love that.
I watched my brother. I watched my brother's team, Ben. choke up a 24-3 lead with 7.5 minutes to go in 2011 against Dan Lynch and his crew. It was rough. It was really rough there. All right, we've got the big four here. Wherever you want to start, whatever game you think is the most compelling, take us there from the Power Four conference champions.
Yeah, so Bobby, I think it's really interesting, just twofold. One of the underrated storylines for, I think, Conference Championship Saturday and the Power Four, what happens to the losing team in the Big Ten and the SEC title games? Because we all know that Penn State and Georgia are in the college football playoff field, even with some would argue the standard is already there for both the Nittany Lions and the Bulldogs to get in to the college football playoff. But will they drop down a spot in terms of seeding? If they lose, what happens if the underdogs pull off the upset? Who's now the new number one? Who is that top team in the CFP field? How does all of that look from that component? I think it's an underrated storyline to talk those seed lines throughout the weekend. And then I think the most compelling game is the ACC championship between SMU and Clemson. Much like we see during conference tournament week in college hoops, bid stealers are out there. And Clemson is certainly that, because if Clemson wins and gets the automatic bid to the college football playoff, what they are not deserving of just based on pure resume, what happens to SMU? We've already started to see the conversation, the Stangs, the Crimson Tide for that final at-large berth. I think that is incredibly compelling from a storyline perspective. Now, with that said, Clemson ain't winning on Saturday night in Charlotte. I don't care what pedigree Dabo Swinney has. I don't care how many ACC championships he has won in the last decade. 7 to be exact. What Rhett Lashley has done with this SMU team, with the belief in this program to compete at the highest level, to get back to power conference football. And when you look at SMU, I think this Stangs team wins and covers as a 2.5-point favorite. Here's the intriguing thing. Total 55.5. SMU has played and beat 5 teams, or not beat all 5, but they have beaten 5 teams in ACC action and in their final non-conference game against TCU that are above 500. In all 5 of those games, they allowed at least 25 points, all 5 games over. But the Mustangs have the 4th best rushing defense in the country. So you're going to make Cade Klubnik beat you through the air, which very well could happen. But if SMU does give up some points to teams with winning records, Clemson can't score against teams with winning records. Clemson has played 4 teams this season that have a winning record above 500, not just 6-6, not just bowl eligible, at least a game above 500. They are 1-3 straight up with a last-second win against Pitt as a double-digit favorite against the Panthers. They are 0-4 against the spread. They are averaging just about 18 points per game. I think SMU wins this game and makes a statement. Give me the Stangs -2.5.
Ooh.
That's big. That's big time. I mean, I'm from Dallas, so it's like, I mean, that'd be amazing. I used to grow up going to those games when they were good in the 80s, and then death penalty, right? But now they're back. Good for them. I want to ask you this, because this goes into that Boise State convo, right? Boise State, UNLV, but I'm interested in this Arizona State, Iowa State, Power 4. Winner of this, Arizona State's hot. Could they potentially jump Boise in the rankings with a win? So go over that Big 12 championship. Yeah,
Schlegel, I don't think so. I think if there is a conference to actually be mad at the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, it's not the high and almighty SEC and the hypothetical matchups they may or probably would not win. It's the Big 12. The committee has looked at this Big 12 team and disregarded a lot of the metrics that we try to highlight for other teams. BYU's strength of record and strength of schedule is better than multiple teams ranked in front of them, and they're 18th. BYU has 2 losses, albeit to Arizona State, who controls their own destiny. But I think the Big 12 was highly disregarded by the selection committee. And Schlegs, I would find it mystifying if Arizona State beats a team ranked behind them and moves up past Boise if the Broncos win, because that's a 5-spot gap at this moment. Now, as for the Big 12 championship game, as soon as the numbers open, I bet ASU. Money line -111. It is now a 2.5-point spread in favor of Kenny Dillingham's Sun Devils, one of the best cover teams in the country. 10-2 straight up, a cover in all 10 of those victories. And here's the biggest difference. When you think Iowa State, you might think the physicality that Matt Campbell's fronts generally bring. not this year, third best passing defense in the country, but allowing more than 170 yards per game on the ground. And your favorite running back's favorite running back outside of Ashton Genty is Cam Scatterbo. His number 114 and a hook against the Cyclones. I think there is a lot to contain for this Iowa State team against this Arizona State team. I lean with the Sun Devils, who are also really sound defensively this season as well. So I think Arizona State wins the Big 12 championship. I think Arizona State will play in the college football playoff. More than likely, Schlegs, as that 12 seed, could they get inside the top 11 and move the last at-large out? Potentially. I do think it's ASU, though, in that 12 spot. Would be a compelling game against whoever the 5 ends up being.
It's
that's crazy. That's crazy because you have a conference champion that's going to have to go on a road game.
For sure.
Think about that. They don't even get a home. They don't even get a home game like first round, guys.
Like there's a lot of things that are going to change in this format because I don't think there's a lot of people. I think the conference champions getting an automatic berth was not to satiate the SEC or the Big Ten. They knew their conference champ and probably their second or third best conference teams would be high enough ranked to be in a fine position, despite what the SEC might be yelling right now. The ACC and the Big 12 are getting demeaned throughout this thing, and they're the ones that have the right to not be happy by this format that was supposed to guarantee them more of an equitable playing field.
Yeah, and then they throw Boise in there, which is going to be amazing. Ben, one of the things I found remarkable, you look through the lines of this week. I mean, and I don't know if this is because everybody's really divisionless now or almost everyone. There's no extended spreads. I mean, they're all inside a touchdown, many of them inside a field goal, that including the Big Ten championship and the SEC championship. Both of those games hovering right around a field goal, 3.5 and 2.5 from what I'm seeing. It's surprising to me. Like, I didn't think Penn State, I thought that might be opened up. Oregon minus 6.5 or 7.
Yeah.
It's pretty tight.
Yeah, Bobby, I bet it as soon as it opened up on Saturday, right? When Penn State claimed that last spot in the Big Ten championship game, opened Oregon minus 3.5. I'm like, ha. Let me log on real quick. Get it. This number is going to be 4.5, 5.5. It's remained there, which I find a little bit intriguing. Can Penn State finally step up in a spot when they are not expected to win a football game outright and do so or even keep a number close? Since the beginning of 2022, the Nittany Lions only an underdog 5 times, 3 against Ohio State, twice against Michigan. They are 0-5 straight up. They are 1-4 against the spread, the only cover in the 2022 game against the Buckeyes. They lost that game by double digits, but did cover as a 15.5 point underdog. They have been atrocious. They are averaging 17.6 points per game in their matchups against AP top 5 foes, as we saw against Ohio State with a negative 16-point differential. I think Oregon is the most, if not one of the top 3 most balanced teams in college football. I think the Ducks win this game. I think they win so comfortably. I'm not sure it's a 14-point blowout, but I do believe Oregon will finally get that conference championship they have waited for under Dan Lanning.
You're muted again, Schlegel.
Oh, I know. I was like, do I get to go? Because I want to go to the SEC now. I don't know, Bob. Like you were feeling good there. Talk to us about Georgia, Texas, because now we got a rematch. Georgia on the road just dismantled Texas with the physicality, crap ton of sacks. You see it happening again, or you think Stark has something up his sleeve to like kind of slow down that defense in this matchup?
Yeah, Schlegs, I was kind of blown away by this line of all the lines in conference championship weekend, because entering the regular season finale weekend, Georgia, of course, tested in 8 overtimes against the Yellow Jackets. Texas on the road, a favorite, but not a hefty favorite against a top 20 team at the time in A&M. And the renewal of the Lone Star Showdown, it was Georgia as the minus money favorite who had already clinched their spot to win the SEC championship. I thought Georgia would be the slight 2.5-point favorite, even in that presumed matchup against Texas. So when the Longhorns opened up as the favorite, I have told you guys this, I have said it so many times, Georgia as an underdog is almost an auto bet, because they've been a dog twice, only twice since the start of 2021. They have won outright in both. Clemson in the opener of the 2021 campaign, of course, hammering Texas as a 4.5-point road dog in Austin earlier this year. So why would Georgia, basically in a home game in Atlanta, be getting points to a team they beat by 15 on the road? And then I started to look at the numbers. Oh, that's interesting. And then I looked a little bit more at the numbers. Oh, that's interesting. I actually think Texas minus 2.5 is one of my favorite bets of the weekend. This Georgia team, I remember being on the show leading into that monumental matchup on October 19th. And I said there is one elite defense entering the game in Austin, and it's not the Bulldogs. And it was their best defensive performance of the season to keep that game under, despite pretty mediocre offensive play and 3 interceptions out of Carson Beck. Now, in the last 3 games for Georgia, Beck has not thrown an interception to 9 touchdown passes. But Georgia used to be so good at running the football. They're not. They haven't had somebody rush for more than 90 yards against an FBS foe this season. That's almost unheard of in Athens, under Kirby Smart, under Mark Richt, under anybody the last 45 years. And Texas is improving on the defensive side up front, where they were elite last year, as we saw on display against A&M. This is my concern. And as you start to go back to the Georgia-Texas game, 3 first-half turnovers for Texas, 2 that immediately led to a short field for Georgia inside Texas's 35-yard line that they took advantage of quickly. But who scored every touchdown for Georgia? Trevor Etienne, not expected still to play in this game for UGA. Nate Frazier, the lead back now. I think Texas does a good job of containing him. In Georgia's rush defense, oh boy, it ain't good. As Haynes King and Jamal Haynes displayed last week in Athens, I actually lay the 2.5 with Texas as long as Quinn Ewers can play seemingly clean football on Saturday.
Wow, that's big right there, Ben. Coming strong today here in the final weekend of college football. Before we get to the bonus time, all we got is Army-Navy next week for the president.
Bowl games.
Yeah.
Probably some bowl games that start next Saturday.
We got the full Monty there. We'll stay with Ben here through the end of college football season as long as he'll have us. Ben, thank you for the time. Sorry to keep you waiting. You are great as always.
Listen, as long as you will have me as well. I think we need a rooster as the mascot for this show moving forward. I appreciate you both. We'll talk next week.
Absolutely. It's Ben Scott Stevens on Twitter, and then check him out on Sports Grid. All right, coming up, Schlegel, we'll wrap up the show with his parting thoughts. All right, Schlegel, you went long today. You got 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I love Ben Scott Stevens. And second off, I choose to be a positive juice bringer, right? Instead of a negative Nick or a negative Nancy like everybody else that's in the comments. Go Bucks.
All right. We appreciate your positivity, Schlegel. Keep bringing the juice. Stay locked in. We'll see you tomorrow. Bringing the juice at 12:30 as we preview the college football playoff selection show. Where will the Buckeyes be? Who will they play? We'll talk about tomorrow at 12:30. See you then.